The Midnight Cry. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. The return of Jesus Christ. Matthew chapter 25, verse 6. Part number 4. Daniel's timeline, 458, 457 BC to 2030 AD. Hosea's 3 days. The 483 years of Daniel unto the Messiah cut off. Daniel chapter 9, verse 24 through verse 27. The day, season, or year Jesus Christ returns to earth. Daniel's timeline, 458, 457 BC to 2030 AD. Note number 1. The timeline begins with Daniel, chapter 9, verse 24. 70 weeks, 490 years, are determined upon thy people Israel, and upon the holy city Jerusalem, to finish the transgression, and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. The timeline is a historical timeline that cannot be changed. The years are all solar years of 365 and 1/4 days. The last 7 solar years of the 6,000-year timeline remains the same. The tribulation time is shortened to 2,520 days to fit Israel's feast days. Matthew chapter 24, verse 22, and except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened. Daniel's timeline, 458, 457 BC to 2030 AD. Note number 2. Daniel chapter 9, verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince shall be 70 weeks, 49 years, and 62 weeks. 62 weeks are 483 years. The streets shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. The commandment went forth in 458, 457 BC to 408 BC to 26 AD plus 3½ years to 30 AD plus 2,000 years to 2030 AD, which is the entire 6,000-year Bible timeline. 458, 457 BC to 408 BC is 49 years. 408 BC to 26 AD is the other 434 years. The fall of 26 AD to 30 AD Passover is the 3½ year ministry of Jesus. From Adam to Jesus' death is 4,000 years. Hosea chapter 6 verse 2 is 30 AD to 2030 AD. The first and second day is 2,000 years, totaling 6,000 years. The first 4 days are complete. Hosea's 3 days make a week of 7 days. Nehemiah chapter 2 verse 1 through verse 5. In the month of Nisan, Nehemiah was given permission to go and build the city of his father's sepulchres, that I may build it. The 7th month used to be Nisan, and it was changed to the 1st month, which used to be Abib. Exodus chapter 13 verse 4, chapter 23 verse 15, chapter 34 verse 18, Deuteronomy chapter 16 verse 1. I say 458, 457 BC because Israel's years start in the spring of the year after spring vernal equinox and overlap solar years. Daniel's 483 years ends in the fall of 26 AD when Jesus was baptized by John. From Adam to Jesus' death is 4,000 years. Hosea chapter 6 verse 2 is 30 AD to 2030 AD. The first and second day is 2,000 years, totaling 6,000 years. Daniel's timeline, 458, 457 BC to 2030 AD. Note number 3. Hosea chapter 6 verse 2. Day 2 and day 3. To have a day 2 and 3, you have to have a day 1 to have a complete timeline. Daniel's 70th week is at the end of day 2, or 2,000 years. Day 3 is the 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ on earth. Daniel's 62 week starts in the fall and ends in the fall of the year. This is one continuous timeline. You can change what is in the timeline, but you cannot change the timeline. These dates are historical data that agrees with the Bible, which you can search for yourself. This timeline includes the birth and death of Jesus. Note number 4, Daniel chapter 9 verse 26. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war desolations are determined. Note verse 25 and verse 26 give two different endings to the 483 years, unto and after. The Messiah cannot appear in the year 483 and die in the year 483, for he had a 3½ year ministry. The first 69 weeks are solar years. The last 7 solar years are 365¼ day years. The tribulation days are shortened to fit Israel's feast days. See Matthew chapter 24 verse 22 and Mark chapter 13 verse 20. Daniel's timeline, 457 BC to 2030 AD. Note number 5, Daniel chapter 9 verse 27. He, the man of sin, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 3 through verse 12, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, Daniel's 70th week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause a sacrifice and oblation to cease. Whoever this man is only confirms the covenant, he does not make the covenant. Note number 6, Daniel chapter 12 verse 11. From the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Note number 7, Daniel chapter 12 verse 12. Blessed is he who comes to the 1,335 days. Daniel's 1,335 days is September the 29th and 30th, 2019 AD, Feast of Trumpets to May the 25th and 26th, 2023 AD, Pentecost, the day of first fruits, the end of the harvest. Daniel chapter 9 verse 27. He shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. The 7th week is 7 years, and in the midst of the week he shall break the covenant. The 7 years are shortened to 2,520 days, but the timeline remains the same. Matthew chapter 24 verse 22, Revelation chapter 11 verse 2 and 3, and chapter 12 verse 6. Daniel's timeline, 457 BC to 2030 AD. Note number 8, Daniel chapter 12 verse 7, verse 11, and verse 12. For a time, times, and a half time, 1,290 days, and 1,335 days. Revelation chapter 11 verse 2 and 3, 42 months. Revelation chapter 12 verse 6, 1,260 days, and verse 14, for a time and times and half a time. Revelation chapter 13 verse 5, 40 and 2 months. The 2,520 days are from May 25th and 26th, 2023 AD to Passover, April the 17th and 18th, 2030 AD. From Feast of Trumpets, 2019 AD to Passover 2030 AD is known as the latter days. All the dates and times for the Lord's return end with Passover, April 17th and 18th, 2030 AD. Note number 9, Hosea chapter 6, verse 1 and 2. After 2 days the Lord will revive us. In the 3rd day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. The end of the 2nd day is when all Israel will be saved. Romans chapter 11, verse 25 and verse 26. Those 3 days are 1,000-year days. Psalms chapter 90, verse 4, 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 8. 30 AD to 2030 AD is 2,000 years. 2 days, the 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth, is the third day. These 3 days has nothing to do with the death and resurrection of Jesus, the transgression of Israel, and to make an end of sins. Daniel chapter 9, verse 24. Won't happen till Jesus returns and all Israel will be saved. Romans chapter 11, verse 25 and verse 26. The 483 years of Daniel unto the Messiah cut off. Daniel chapter 9, verse 24 through verse 27. Daniel chapter 9, verse 25 and verse 26. From the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks, 62 weeks. The first command of 457 BC minus 483 years is unto the fall of 26 AD, when Jesus was baptized, and after 62 weeks he is cut off. You cannot change these weeks into 360-day years because Shavuot is a week of solar years. Only the last week is shortened. Matthew chapter 24, verse 22. The commandment to restore and build Jerusalem was 457 BC, not the second one in 445 BC. The first 7 weeks, 49 years, ends in 408 BC, the year Jerusalem is finished being rebuilt. Historical data. The first 49 solar years are not shortened. The 62 weeks of 434 years ends in the fall of 26 AD are not shortened. Jesus was born on Feast of Trumpets 5 BC, the 7th month of 4 BC. The same year Herod the Great died and was circumcised 8 days later and dwelt among men. John chapter 1, verse 14, during the Feast of Tabernacles. Mary and Joseph was in Jerusalem or Bethlehem for 40 days to fulfill her purification time to offer her 2 pigeons. Leviticus chapter 12, verse 1 through verse 8, and Luke chapter 2, verse 21 through verse 24 and verse 39. They performed all the law before going back to Nazareth. Jesus was baptized on the Day of Atonement by John the Baptist, being anointed for ministry at about the age of 30. The 483 years of Daniel unto the Messiah cut off. Daniel chapter 9, verse 24 through verse 27. The unto 483 years refers to the start of the 3½ year ministry of Jesus. Luke chapter 24, verse 13 through verse 27 and verse 44. Jesus could not die for our sins till all that was written of him, beginning at Moses and the prophets and the Psalms and in all the scriptures. The cutoff after 483 years refers to when Jesus was crucified 3½ years later on Friday, the preparation day, and the next day was the Sabbath. John chapter 19, verse 14 and verse 31. The seventh day has always been known as the Sabbath day. You cannot have an unto and after in the same year, for Jesus had a 3½ year ministry. Passovers of AD 30, AD 31, AD 32, or AD 33 cannot be pinpointed to an actual date. The Jewish priests used 3 witnesses to look for a crescent on the new moon, and 2 had to agree, and that happening with the ripening of the barley grain harvest, to have a wave offering the day after Passover. Leviticus chapter 23, verse 1 through verse 23. Without a barley grain wave offering, they could not have a Passover till the next full moon. Note, there are 2 full moons in the year 30 AD and 2030 AD. They are years with 13 moon cycles. Passover always starts in the first month, Abib, Exodus chapter 12, verse 18. Today, Nisan. on the 14th day of the month at evening, and always on Saturday. Passover varies year to year according to the first full moon of the northern spring vernal equinox. The new moon was always day 1, and the full moon was always the 14th. The lunar cycles always started the calendar year for the Jewish feasts. The Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles was in the 7th month, Tezra. The day, season, or year Jesus Christ returns to earth. Not knowing the day or hour does not close the door to being aware of Jesus' coming. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 4. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25. Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting, encouraging one another, and so much the more as ye see the day approaching, by the partial list of birth pain signs given in part number 7. Matthew chapter 25, verse 6. At midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. The day of the rapture and the day Jesus Christ returns to earth are spiritually discerned by the body of Christ. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9 and verse 10. But as it is written, Eye have not seen, nor ear heard, neither have it entered into the heart of man the things which God has prepared for them that love him. Verse 10. But God has revealed them unto us, the church, by his Spirit. For the Spirit searches all things, yea, the deep things of God. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14. But the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness unto him, neither can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. Knowing the timeline will not give you the day or hour Jesus is coming, but it does reveal the season and the year. From this slide, you can go to part number 5 of the Midnight Cry, how God uses sevens with Israel's feast days and the 7,000-year timeline.